Hey everybody, Mr. Wallowitz here. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about how the United States government was always more willing to compromise over slavery and not so much do anything to abolish it. How it's a lot to do with how the North was benefiting just as much from slavery as the South, and it was the driving force of the American market economy. So here we have the compromise of slavery. A couple of definitions for you to take note of for upcoming tests. First, we have popular sovereignty, the practice of allowing voters in a territory to decide whether to permit slavery there. Two, the Fugitive Slave Act, a law that made it a federal crime to help runaway slaves and to allow for the arrest of escaped slaves, even in areas where slavery was illegal. And we have compromise, a settlement of differences by mutual concessions, an agreement reached by adjustment of conflicting or opposing claims principles. The Missouri Compromise. Missouri is up for statehood in 1820. Missouri had decided it would join the Union as a slave state. Although it is considered a northern state, it should have been a free state. By adding Missouri, this would have disrupted the balance of free and slave states. So basically, from the United States' foundation, there has been a balance of free states, states that did not have slavery, and slave states, states that did allow slavery. And this was done in order to first get the southern states on board with ratifying the United States Constitution. It is so that laws couldn't be passed to end slavery. Laws couldn't really be passed to ensure slavery lived forever. It was done so that really the issue of slavery would be put to bed. We have the same amount of free states, the same amount of slave states. We're just going to try to cooperate with this. We are trying to live and make sure that the United States moves on without any sort of disruption and any sort of argument, really, that the United States should be completely free or the United States should be completely slave states. In order to keep the balance between free and slave states, Maine, then a region of Massachusetts, still was put up for statehood as well. This by adding Missouri as a slave state, chopping off a piece of Massachusetts and what would eventually become the state of Maine, and having Maine entered as a free state would have kept that balance. And a compromise was made when James B. Thomas of Illinois said that there would be no more slavery above the 36-degree, 30-minute north line. And this would, so any state that wanted to join the Union above this line would be entered as a free state, and any state that would join below that line would be entering the United States as a slave state. And here we have what that line would look like. So at the time, it made sense for the northern states to agree to this compromise in that anything above that line, I mean, if you look at the map, it shows that there are a heck of a lot more potential for northern states than there would be southern states. So the potential to have a lot more free states than there would be slave states. So the North goes along with this compromise, knowing probably that they're going to benefit from it. The South goes along with it because they get Missouri as a slave state. The slavery issue is not put to bed. It is still open. There is going to be time to negotiate. And they see that that line is not set in stone, and that line can and most probably will be moved. The Compromise of 1850. So 30 years later, we're going to have another issue. Issue of state balance came into question again in 1850. One state is up for statehood, and two territories could join the United States, again disrupting the balance in Congress. Now, while those territories would not have had immediate impact in Congress, eventually they could have. And so it was needed, once again, from the point of view of the government, to compromise. We don't want to get rid of slavery. We don't really want slavery to continue anywhere else. We don't want it to spread to other new territories, so we're going to have to compromise again. Senator Henry Clay, yes, the same Henry Clay that was involved in the 1824 corrupt bargain. He is still a member of Congress. This time he is a senator, and he's going to give a speech which called for compromise on slavery, slavery issue that was dividing the Union. He is going to try to get both sides to the bargaining table to try to work out some sort of deal so that slave states and free states can live together in the United States. Henry Clay was known as the Great Compromiser. Upon Clay's urging, Senator Stephen A. Douglas, a Democrat of Illinois, divided Clay's bill into several smaller bills and passed each separately. So Stephen Douglas, who will eventually run for president in 1860, will see what Henry Clay is trying to do, and instead of trying to pass everything that Clay wants in one big bill, he breaks it up separately so that each can be debated and each can probably be passed a little bit easier. So here we have the terms of the Compromise of 1850. California up for statehood, they would enter the Union as a free state. The two territories, New Mexico and Utah, were allowed to use popular sovereignty to decide the issue of slavery in each territory. It would be left up to the voters, the people living in New Mexico, the people living in Utah, to decide, do we want slavery or do we want to be a free state? The slave trade is then abolished in the District of Columbia. Washington, D.C. will no longer participate in the slave trade. It effectively ends any slaves coming in and out of Washington, D.C., at least on paper. In practice, this never happens. Washington, D.C. was very much still involved in the slave trade. And 4, the Fugitive Slave Act made any federal official or citizen who did not arrest a runaway slave liable to pay a fine or receive jail time. So if you, as a citizen, were actively trying to help a runaway slave and you get caught, you could serve jail time. Any escaped slave who escapes to a northern state where slavery is illegal can be captured and returned to slavery, returned to their slave owner. The Fugitive Slave Act was very controversial because even freed slaves or African Americans who were born free could be recaptured or captured again and returned to slavery. It's put the fear in a lot of people, a lot of African Americans at the time, because it didn't matter if you were a runaway slave. It didn't matter if you were freed or if you were born free. You were always living in fear that you could be captured and sold or returned to slavery. This caused abolitionists to step up their efforts to end slavery as a result of this law. They see this as a step too far, and they are going to really, really push for the abolition, the all-out abolition of slavery. So here we have the United States government in constant compromise over the slavery issue rather than trying to put the kibosh on it. They recognize the importance of slavery to the American economy. It is the driving force of the American economy, as more than half of the economy relies on the production of or the harvesting of cotton, selling that cotton to the northern states so that they can manufacture it into cloth and other textiles and sell it throughout the world. The United States government did its best to ensure that slavery would continue. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.